Hey there, and welcome to the Ericom Technical Demo Series. I'm Peter Silva. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Ericom. We're the cybersecurity unit at Cradlepoint. And I'm thrilled to have Sergey Starzinski with me. Hey there, Serge. How's it going?
Hey, Peter, how you doing?
Always good to see you. Now, kind of interesting. You came to me and you want to share a little bit of new functionality within the Ericom containers, those isolated cloud containers that we always talk about. And it's kind of some new functionality within the Cradlepoint routers now, isn't it?
Yeah. In fact, it's a product of a tight integration between the Ericom and Cradlepoint. I wouldn't call it a completely new functionality, but we are leveraging Cradlepoint router's ability to run containers in a way where we can run the Ericom connector inside of the container right on the Cradlepoint router. What it allows us to do is to connect the on-prem apps to the Ericom cloud and then expose those apps in a specific way, which I'll be talking about to ensure that those apps are protected, those apps have controlled access, especially from unmanaged devices, and those apps are easily maintained and the security controls are easily applied to those apps as well.
Nice. And I'm guessing you're talking about this right here, the secure private access, right?
That is correct. So when we talk about secure private access, we're talking about two different types of apps and two different ways basically of accessing those apps. First, you can of course use the client-based approach use the ZTNA client, connect to the Ericom cloud and access those apps that way. There's another way to access those apps is what we call the web application isolation way, which uses the RBI technology or reverse RBI, if you will, to expose those internal and external apps to the end user. And when end user accesses those applications, they're actually using the RBI technology. And by using the RBI technology, we can actually ensure with all the details of that session, the access session, are controlled. We control everything, all the data that goes in and out. We control and scan all the files and any content what is being shared with the application. And why is that important? And
so just one step, just for everyone's edification. When we talk about remote browser isolation, that's literally a virtual browser in an isolated cloud container. And so we're isolating the end user's browser in a cloud container, protecting the local machine, and then executing all the active scripts in that cloud. And then that information is then securely, streamed, if you will, to the end user's browser. So nothing active is being executed on the local machine. So web application isolation is essentially using that technology, and instead of isolating the browser, you're now isolating that web application, and the application itself is now in that isolated container, essentially protecting the entire infrastructure behind that application server.
Exactly. And that is important because the type of users and end user devices are accessing those applications usually are unmanaged. So right. The enterprises can control those endpoints. There is no way to ensure with the antivirus and anti-malware software is running and up to date. There is no there is no way to determine whether or not that particular endpoint actually contains that malware, what can infect the web applications exposed to that endpoint.
The whole kind of determining security posture before you are allowing it to do anything.
Exactly. There is no way to determine what kind of endpoint is that.
Yep.
All right. So when we talk about this type of access, there are actually different types of apps you can expose through the platform. And the first type would be a SaaS apps or the public apps, which we connect to using various technologies, and to ensure there's no direct connection between the end user and that particular web app. And there's a second type of application is our legacy on-prem web apps, where we would like to add security controls to make sure it follows the zero trust best practices, and which we would like to expose through the web application isolation to ensure those protections are in place.
Yep.
And just to do, how do we do that? And obviously, you need to connect that application somehow, which is running somewhere on-prem in the data center, to the cloud platform. And this is exactly what we'll be talking about today. And there is a nice and easy way to do that if you already have a Cradlepoint router in place.
So you're like creating that, a digital or a virtual air gap between the user's device and the application itself. And I imagine it can really protect against a lot of those. Like I know we even have a white paper about how WAI protects against the OWASP top 10. I'll put that in the description for those to check out, but kind of makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And you can take advantage of all these protections what WAI affords and just take it to the next level by running that connector right on the Cradlepoint router. So you don't have to have a separate VM or a hardware piece where you would be running, sort of a Linux machine and then run the connector inside of that Linux machine. You don't have to maintain that infrastructure. You don't have to update it, and you don't have to ensure what the connector is actually running, because by using the container on the Cradlepoint side, you are basically achieving the same result. As long as a target application is available and reachable through the Cradlepoint router, you'll be able to expose it into the platform and safely and securely kind of expose it through the platform to the end users.
Pretty cool. So I see you got a GitHub repo, and anyone can access this. Of course, we'll put the link in the description.
Yeah, absolutely. It's open repo. It's ZTE-connector, and which, by the way, contains everything you need in the Docker files and on the YAML for Docker Compose and all the bits and pieces to build the container if you would like to build it yourself. There is also a reference to the container tags, which are hosted in the Docker Hub. And of course, you can download and run it on your AMD 64 architecture machine, or you can download and run it on the Cradlepoint router using the ARM64 architecture. I just have to note that not all Cradlepoint routers are capable of running the containers, so you have to check with your particular model and whether or not that particular model can actually run the containers. But majority of those, especially high-end units, are able to effortlessly run those containers.
Fair enough.
Now let's look at the diagram for a second. So how do we connect the application? Right, we're running that connector in the Docker container on the router itself. What it does is actually establishes the WireGuard tunnel to the platform, and then by using that tunnel, can actually pass the data back and forth from the application, which resides behind the connector, which is connected to the Cradlepoint router.
Yep.
On the other side, there are end users and unmanaged devices which can either use the client, like I said, or just use the portal and access the application using the WAI. There are IAM checks in place So even if the application doesn't have those security protections in place, the platform automatically adds those, and we can integrate with any SAML providers. We can also have our built-in identity provider to provide those controls to the end users.
Nice.
Now, not only that, but also because the router has the SD-WAN capabilities and can switch in between the broadband and cellular connections, we can ensure the connectivity from the connector into the platform. And the connector will also constantly check its external IP, and if it changes, and which would indicate what the failover has happened from the broadband to cellular or back, and it actually updates its external IP on the platform side and reestablishes the tunnel. So
Nice.
from the enterprise perspective, there is a continuity, the business continuity, and from the end user perspective, there is no impact. Even if the ISP connection goes down, broadband goes down, or one of the cellular connections goes down, because the Cradlepoint is capable of running dual SIEMs, and we can actually switch in between different cellular providers, which is extremely cool.
So two quick questions on this. So adding this piece to the router, and I'm guessing this as it comes up, I'm thinking what audience may wonder, because it's available on the higher end routers, whatever additional load there is on the CPU, if you will, of the router is sort of negligible. Like, this doesn't impact, the router's performance in any way. And then second question would be, so does it also then inherit, if you will, some of the other cool pieces, like, the IP addresses on the back end are not broadcast. So, can't lateral move, only namespace, that kind of stuff. Is that also part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And at first, the answer to your first question is yes. The load is negligible. There is what we have observed. It just bumps the CPU usage to maybe 10 or 15%. No
Nice.
more than that, depending on the load. And to answer your second question is absolutely, you can configure it in a way where it complies to your zero trust policies and the zero trust approach in the first place. So you can only access the resources you have defined to be accessible and nothing else, right? And not only that, you can actually define those resources per a specific group of users, or even on the level of individual users.
Right.
So it's pretty. I would say it's pretty safe, as safe as it can be, and it's pretty lightweight. It uses WireGuard, pretty lightweight, very kind of the modern and very nice type of protocol. But
yeah, and really cool, just a piece of code you can add. So, like, if somebody sees this video today, they can literally go and deploy this on their, again, with the appropriate router, can deploy it, as you're going to do right now. I understand. I believe you're gonna run this.
Enough talking. Let's just create a connector here. I do have a Ericom tenant already configured. We do have one connector running from one of my AWS instances, but let's create a different one. I do have the do shop container running on my Nuke, which is connected to R1900 Cradlepoint router. And I'll just add a connector and expose that application to the portal, and I will try to access it through the portal later on.
Okay.
So I'm going to configure my LAN subnets I would like to expose through the connector. And in this particular case, it's going to be /24 subnet. But like I said, you can expose as specific or as wide as you would like through the connector, and that doesn't even touch the zero trust policies we're going to be configuring or could be configuring for this particular resource.
Got it.
We don't need to specify public IP. And I'll just, let's say it's going to run an Ashburn POP. And boom, the connector has been created. What we need is our authentication key. And that authentication key, we'll just add to our configuration, which I'll show in a second. As you can see, the new connector, it's called the Jew Shop, has been created. It is currently down, of course, because nothing is running in the Cradlepoint side yet, but it's there. Now, because we already have the off key and everything else, all the details we need, we can go back to R1900. If you click on the configuration, added system, containers, and go to projects, and you will see where there's a space where you can define a new container, right, to run. And you click on add and click on compose. And I have something here. And actually, it's the same thing you can copy from the repo as a Cradlepoint container.yaml file, which is basically a Docker compose for this particular container. And you're going to have to supply your tenant name, connector name, auth key, API key, and the tenant ID. And I've got all these pieces in place. I'll show you what it looks like in a second if I copy and paste it right there in the Docker Compose section. So in our case, it's the tenant name, the connector name, and all other pieces are in place. We'll just go back to Compose Builder and add our network where that container is going to be running. In this case, it's a primary LAN. And we'll just add the service, see what the device had been added. We don't need any volumes. We'll just need to create a network here. And let's say our connector is going to be running 0.2 IP address. And click save. Again,
obviously within the range that you originally entered.
Yes, it doesn't have to.
Okay.
It doesn't have to, as long as it has an access to the resource you are exposing. Right?
Okay, got it.
The connector itself doesn't have to be in the same subnet.
Okay.
But once you configured everything in IP and network, it will expose it in the compose section here in the networks, and will pre-populate all the details what you need. Now, if you click save, I'll just need to provide a project name, of course. Clicking save and just commit in the NCM. Commit those changes. We'll create that container on the router, and the router will start pulling that container off the Docker Hub.
Oh.
It will take a couple minutes to pull that container, but once that is done, we will see that particular connector will show as connected in the platform. Now, while we're waiting, why don't we go ahead and configure it as an application in our portal? I already have some corporate web apps pre-configured, and I'm going to go ahead and add one more and call it a do shop. And I did have a Jew shop. Yeah, here we go. There's a Jew shop logo. And our IP is actually pretty simple. It's going to be 192.168.0.127, and the port is 3000. This is where my container is running right now.
Okay.
I'll just click save. And that's it. We have the web application created.
Wow.
Great. Now, in order to add it to our portal, we'll just need to create a policy for it. and we'll call it the corporate application, and the corporate application would be our juice shop. And the access type, we'll say it's going to be isolate. Click Save, and you're good to go. Now let's go back to our connectors. It's probably still pulling. Well, it takes a little bit of time, but we access our portal, and as you can see, our portal is actually fronted by the off screen.
Yeah.
And I actually have to log in before I access that portal. You can see there are no agents, or nothing else is running. Basically, I'm just
Oh, and look, it
logging
came
in.
up. I remember the juice shop, that little
Yep.
icon that you created during yeah.
That is correct. So as you can see, there's the juice shop is there. I don't think you can access it at this point until the connector is fully up.
Yep.
But it just shows you how easy it is to create the corporate web application and expose it in the portal. And you can create anything you want. In this particular case, we have a number of those apps pre-configured. If we click on Box, for example, it's going to open that box.com, the website, in the isolation.
Yeah.
And the way you can tell it is actually the isolated session is by looking at the that green tab on top.
I see that.
And also the tab name, which is prefixed by CR in the square bracket.
Oh.
Which means that we're using the crystal rendering for this particular one. But yeah, as you can see,
Amazing.
it's like a very kind of a native type of browsing. You can click around. You can do anything you would do ordinarily with this particular application, with the exception with this is actually running in the isolation.
And on a container on the router, right?
No, this one is not on the container. This one is a public app, so
Okay.
you don't really need a connector to connect this particular
application. Oh, right, of course. Yeah. I get. Yeah,
this particular thing. It's taking its sweet time to actually to instantiate. Taking a little bit
still
of time.
though, I mean, I think it only took you, because I was looking at our running time, and it was, I think, less than 10 minutes for sure. I think it was around, like 7-8 minutes, if that, for you to get it set up, to add the web app, to create the policy. And look, just as we're talking, it's up and running.
It's up and running. So if we click on the juice shop now, we're supposed to be, not yet. Perhaps we need to reload the portal. Let's see. Yeah.
Look at that.
Look at this.
Wow.
10 minutes, you're done. The application is there. You expose it through the portal. It is protected and fronted by the IDP. You control all the aspects of the session with this application, and the connector is running on the Cradlepoint router with all the failover and auto recovery capabilities.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And then obviously you can, control like you were saying earlier, the uploads, the downloads, like how much interaction they can have. The file sanitizing files, like all that kind of stuff. You have the control in there.
Everything, including the clipboard controls, including the manually typed data.
Wow.
You control pretty much anything and everything when it comes to that session. So
very, very cool. We've been talking about this for a little while, so it's kind of really neat to see it finally kind of being configured and rolled out as we said it would.
Yeah. And
really good stuff.
It's open. The repo is there. Instructions are in the repo, how to run it. If you've got a Cradlepoint router, which is capable of running containers, give it a shot. If you want to try the Ericom's WAI technology, reach out.
Yeah.
And we'll set you up. And it's very easy and a very nice and elegant solution for the corporate web applications.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can leave us a comment right here. We'll make sure to reply and get you in touch. And then obviously, like we've said earlier, we'll have the GitHub repo in the description. Obviously, if you'd like to learn more, you can visit us at ericom.com. Thanks so much, Sergey. This is a pretty fun demo to see for sure.
Anytime, Peter. Yeah. Well, next time we'll talk about something very, very exciting, but I won't disclose it.
This was kind of exciting in and of itself. So very cool. Thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed content like this, please like, share, and certainly subscribe to the channel. For my good buddy Sergey, I'm Peter, and we're with Ericom, the cybersecurity unit at Cradlepoint. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, everyone.
Ericom, the cybersecurity unit of Cradlepoint. Visit us at www.ericom.com today.